Wow! Hi everyone, this is Papa Zero here once again on Windows 95, and today I will be talking about the one, the only, forbidden Rite Occultist. I always wanted to try the FR, but never got the chance because the key item that has an amazing synergy with it is extremely expensive and seems like a requirement. I am of course talking about Stasis Prism Armor, which has ridiculous recoup of lifeage. Nay, we shan't be using that in this build. Instead, we're going to be using a tech introduced in 3.18, 3.19, I'm not quite sure, but it is beautiful and made easier with the 3.20's technology. That's right, relics. Stay tuned for those exciting details and more. We're also taking so much damage this time around that instead of focusing on quality of life and more damage dealings, we're triggering additional spells for wither application, which I guess is kind of quality of life. And more damage dealings, don't worry about it. Hey, at least we're doing it differently on this build. This time around, we're inflicting wither naturally through withering presence, and on the toughest of bosses through totems. Once again, we got a hold of a sweet and all-powerful chest. I'm just kidding, guys. It's just a +4 to our FR with some resistances. It was the cheapest, mediocrist option I could find for one divine. This build is quite akin to the Winter Orb Pathfinder build I made, except it has more damage, less defenses, and you gotta target a lot better. This build can be built more tankier, but my version is definitely more on the glass cannon side. Besides the original Sin Ring, this build was also quite cheap to put together. The other expensive item, and is a must, is a Progenesis Flask, which I will show you later. And lastly, we're using Awakened Spell Echo, which provides roughly around 15% more damage over the regular Spell Echo, but it's not a requirement. Oh, just real quick on this map, I want to show you the power of Chaos and why I love it so much. The boss has something like 106% life as extra energy shield, but since we're chaos damage dealing chads and chadettes, we don't care. We still kill him under 2 seconds flat and move on to the next map. First, let's go over the mechanics. And just so you aren't confused why our flasks are refilling automatically, it's because we're utilizing the Traitor Keystone from Brutal Restraint Jewel. Hey, Papa Zero, why not just roll a Pathfinder? One might ask to oneself. Hey, this ain't no Pathfinder only channel, okay? Hey, you're not supposed to see that. Don't worry about it, okay? Hey, don't worry about that. Now to cast FR. After just a few casts, we're almost dead. We do have a bit of a recoup on the tree, but not nearly enough. So, after we add this little Quicksilver right here, you can see we get almost all of our life back. That's because we do damage to ourselves that we leech, which is amplified via Vorm's Malt Belt. But casting it non-stop still ain't no good. So we introduced Progenesis, which helps out a bit more because we take portion of the damage over time now. Last but not least, Valpack doubles our leech recovery, making us retain something like 95% of our life. Very nice. We got a +4 chest, as I mentioned earlier, which adds ton of damage. It has life, it has resistances, and yes, we can ignore the Zealot's Oath. Since we're using Valpact, we ain't got no life or ES regenerations. We got the 2 cheapest void batteries I could find. We got +1 power charge helm. As you saw earlier, ooh, that juicy +1 power charge relic. And anointed, combined with our tree as an occultist, we have a total of 11 power charges. Together with the chance to gain a frenzy charge on hit, we get 11 frenzy charges as well due to Badge of the Brotherhood. And that is where our damage comes from. Since we're taking so much damage, I decided to put 2 spells that fit with the projectile theme that we're going for into my cast when damage taken setup. And they apply wither on hit. Kinda nice. Also, the divergent kind. Lastly, we got this nice little chaos/wither tree forkage area over here. But this time we took chaos damage leech SES for the nice quality of life. It's not super great because we have very little ES, but every little bit helps. Something very important to note is that even though we have some mana regeneration, it's not enough to cast FR, and therefore we have to supplement with the notable mastery damage taken recouped as mana, as well as Watcher's Eye. Yes, we have a Lightning Golem linked to our level 20 cast 1 damage taken setup because it dies every 3 seconds. We also have Molten Shell that lasts like 1 second since we take so much damage. I just had an extra slot, so I threw it in there. We have a chance to gain Elusive on hit, and when it hits and Val Haste hits, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. We're zooming. We're running Determination for a bit of armor and Purity of Elements because it's too good. And if you have astutely noticed, we have 8 uniques equipped and only one of those has resistances, so they are much needed. Take your time. Shop around for a good Militant Faith Jewel. Mine gives me a little bit of aura effect. It gives me some life. It gives me some frenzy charge on kill. And even though I tested it, it's not as good as the ring. It's fine-ish mapping, but no good on bosses. I do want to note that once again, I would not recommend this build strictly for bosses because the flask with damage taken is leeched needs to be up 100% of the time. So what I actually did on some bosses is took out the silver flask off the bar, and therefore I would have a pseudo unlimited flask charges on the remaining 3. Being immune to bleed is very, very important. Again, mapping with all 4 flasks is just fine. Lastly, we take chaos damage from FR, which is why it's imperative we have at least 75% chaos resistances. Otherwise, we take a lot of damage. I'm at 70. With Progenesis Flask, I am capped at 75. Alternative setups. Let's start with the chest. I bought this for like 200C thinking I was going to squeeze endurance charges and maybe Immortal Call setup that would trigger often, but alas, I needed resistances, so I didn't even attempt it. You can get a Redeemer chest with Frenzy Charge Generation instead of the ring if it's too expensive or you want your armor to do a little bit more work for you through ES, armor, life, resistances. If you want more flask generation, craft yourself a nice chest piece and slap flask charges gainage implicit on it. Last but not least, if you don't want to corrupt your relic, you could try Skin of the Lords with VP with the right colors. I did a 5-second quick search on PoE Trade, which yielded this beautiful chest piece. Of course, getting the right colors would be a pain in the butt, but something you could look into. Maybe if you want more survivability in addition to or instead of Determination or Purity of Elements, you could run Discipline via Watcher's Eye like this, or the Vitality version, which has life on hit. Though I think on this specific build, we want ES on hit to have our ES up at all times, fully filled. If you had more increased mana reservation points on the tree or maybe Enlighten, you could try to fit in Scatterbots that would increase DPSs. Oh, you're using Frenzy Charge on hit chest. You got a free ring slot, you say. Say no more. Slap one of these bad boys on there for some quality of life per enemy hit with spells gainage. If you absolutely hate Energy Shield and you can't stand the sight of it, equip one of these Blood Rage bad boys and gain some Frenzy Charges while mapping. Of course, on bosses no good. I tried using Asenath's gloves for clear and it felt slightly smoother than the Embalmer, but the Embalmer has more damage, so I took that instead. Plus, I didn't want to have Asenath's gloves on every build I make. And even for more damage, instead of having Enfeeble on it, you could instead have no implicit and have Assassin's Mark on hit. But you still want explosions from Profane Bloom, so you'd want to take Whispers of the Doom for a 2 curse limit, or Unholy Authority. For my purposes, I didn't need it, so I didn't take it. In your FR setup, you could also try Intensify and get additional intensity via the caster mastery. It's more damage when standing still, but I didn't want to ping pong between damage and AoE. If you're still having troubles with mana, try getting a higher level clarity and or limiting to only 1 cast 1 damage taken spell. No original ring setup. This build is definitely possible without the ring. We lose something like 2.5 million or about 15%. But without the ring, we're actually utilizing Void Beacon, which is nice. We also have a ring slot that is empty and hungry to be filled with a delicious treat. We could potentially also look into getting Curse on Hit Despair or other ways lowering the enemy's chaos resistances. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time with another beautiful build.